Good afternoon, MOCA friends. I'm Neil Gibbs, Chief of Staff at the Museum of Chinese in America. On behalf of the MOCA team, we hope you and your loved ones are safe and well. Thank you very much for joining us virtually for an insightful interview and live performance with Philip Sheegog and Jonathan Miron of the innovative music duo ARKAI. The ongoing pandemic has impacted every aspect of life for people around the world. For many Asian American Pacific Islanders, there is the added fear of racism. MOCA is doing its part to document, preserve, and present the experiences of Chinese in America during this turbulent time. We are impressed by the strong response to MOCA's One World COVID-19 special collection, which has been accepting submissions from the public that document and share the stories of Chinese Americans and the Chinese diaspora resisting coronavirus-related hate with incredible acts of compassion, generosity, and creative and artistic expression. If you are interested in telling your story, submitting digital materials, or donating physical artifacts, please email oneword@mocanyc.org. As MOCA is wrapping up our census effort, if you haven't completed the census, please take a few minutes to fill out the questionnaire. Census data determines whether communities will receive critical federal and state funding for education, healthcare, infrastructure, and more for the next 10 years. Moreover, we are eagerly awaiting the day when we can once again welcoming you through our doors. Until then, explore the MOCA for River collection online, where your purchase of MOCA merchandise and books will directly support the museum's work. If you enjoy this public program, we hope you will consider making a gift to become part of a continuing lifeline for MOCA, as we have been hit hard by the pandemic. No amount is too little, and we really appreciate your generosity. Your support will ensure the survival of MOCA. Lastly, this program is brought to you by MOCA friends and partners, including Bloomberg Philanthropies. Without further ado, I would pass the mic to our moderator, Melissa, to introduce Philip and Jonathan of the innovative music duo, ARKAI. Thank you.
Hello, friends. I'm Melissa Wansin Wong. I'm the Associate Director of Institutional Relations at the Museum of Chinese in America. I'm very delighted today that you're joining us for this special live program featuring ARKAI. ARKAI has shared their music at the Met Breuer, the Lincoln Center, Carnegie Hall, the Peace Studio, and the 92nd Street Y, among others. In addition, Jonathan and Philip have created Global Perspectives, an educational program that employs the performing arts as a model for exploring global citizenship in our interconnected world. A salient mission during these troubled times, indeed. So I'm now going to give you an overview of what you will be experiencing with us today. Jonathan and Philip will be performing for us live their original composition, Aurora, very shortly. The performance will then be followed by conversations between myself and the duo, after which Jonathan and Philip will perform the adaptation of two familiar and famous compositions. You, the audience, will then have the opportunity to ask ARKAI questions through our chat function. We will then end our hour of music and conversation with a performance of an original composition responding to the COVID-19 pandemic by Philip and Jonathan. And without further ado, Listen with MOCA presents to you ARKAI.
Back to you, Melissa.
Hear me?
Hi, yeah, we can hear you now.
Great, there we go. Got all the audio.
Sorry, I think there was a little bit of an audio malfunction. So I'm going to repeat my question again. That was a very moving piece of music. I'd like to know what are some of the influences and inspiration behind Aurora?
Well, Aurora was the first piece that Philip and I ever wrote together. We've been playing now for about 2 years with one another, and actually that was a piece that the initial ideas for that piece came together for an event hosted by Barack Obama's sister, which brought together young peace builders from around the country, kind of interspersed with the arts. So we wrote a piece for that event. And so I think it was after that event that we knew that we had something special. And that piece came out of it. And so it really kind of, aligns with what we as artists hope to do, which is really to expand our curiosities to learning from different traditions from around the world, and in turn kind of expanding our voice. And as you can probably tell, we're not the typical violoncello duo. There are many different influences within. And so I love just hearing about all the different things that people take from that piece of music. It means something different to everyone. Everyone that we played it for said something else, something different, and it's really moving to hear that. So that's, in a sense, it's about writing music that kind of reflects the moment that we live in, that the diversity of the world, and to really use our music to bring communities together.
And the kinds of music that Aurora is made up is kind of indicative of how we met to begin with and the kinds of musicians that we were. Both Jonathan and I attended the Juilliard School for our education and our training, and surprisingly actually never met while we were there. And it's a very small building, so that's its own stroke of fate that we never met. But we actually met afterwards at a conference that was hosted at Juilliard, and it was in meeting and improvising together that we discovered not only a very shared musical curiosity, this desire to explore and to create in realms outside of kind of the track that we had been trained in. And so that curiosity naturally brought us together. And I think the music that you just heard and you will continue to hear throughout the program reflects that. It's the classical training, but on top of that, a desire to really expand out, to expand our own artistic voices and the people that we can connect through our music.
Mm-hmm. Sounds wonderful. When you talk about your classical training and the eclectic influences that introduce ARKAI in your work, can you talk a little bit about how you mix and match these different influences? When we think about classical music, we have a stereotype of what that means. What to you, how would you define classical music? And how would you define the way that you have adapted or appropriated diverse musical genres and styles from different time periods and geographies to make ARKAI and the music that you're playing now your own?
That's a really good question. How would I define classical music? There's a lot of tradition within classical music, and everything predominantly is written down, of course. So a lot of it, in our training as classical musicians, is about developing technique so that we can really reinterpret a lot of these works to the best of our artistry. And so I think, coming out of school, we thought a lot about what does a 21st century artist look like in this present day? And I think a couple of things came to mind. I think Nina Simone said it best, is that it's the artist's duty to reflect the times that we live in. And so for me, what that meant was, well, I recognized that I think artists these days need to have the ability to improvise, making something up on the spot, which is kind of very characteristic of other kinds of music like jazz and also pop and other kinds of music. But as classical musicians, not so much. But I thought that was a really important skill to have. So I think both of us collectively went on journeys to learn how to improvise, really. And a lot of that happened outside of school. On top of that, also the ability to arrange music, and also composition. And I think that was something that both Philip and I never imagined we would be composers. And just a couple of years ago, I think the first time we met, we jammed together at this conference that he was telling me about, and we just jammed together for hours with a lot of people singing and dancing. And when you're improvising with someone when it's not going well, it can be torturous, really. But I think that moment there was an ease to it, and as someone who hadn't improvised that much in my life, to be able to improvise with somebody and to carry like the life of this energy of all the group that we were with, everybody was singing.
It was a party.
It was a party for I think over an hour to improvise like that. That was a kind of a moment of reckoning when I was like, there is something special. So back to your question of, expanding our horizons, I think a lot of it was, we learned and appreciate the technique and also just the history that we've learned of classical music through our training. But beyond that, outside kind of leading with our curiosity to understand music from around the world and understanding that classical music is just one little slice of the much bigger puzzle. And that in life and in this world, there's so many different and eclectic, beautiful kinds of art out there, and that it's our responsibility really to go out there and learn more, to become artistic citizens, you can call that, of this present day.
Yeah, that was, very nicely said. Thank you so much for framing, your thought processes and your artistic processes for us. And I understand that a large part of ARKAI's work is really letting audiences listen to famous pieces anew, right? Adapting pieces from different cultures, different periods, presenting in a way that we've never heard of before. Could you talk a little bit more about that? And of course, this leads into me wanting you to introduce your next two pieces that you'll be playing for us, Fønix and Shenandoah.
So as Jonathan was alluding to earlier, one of the skills that we've really been learning and developing as a duo is the art of arrangement. How do you take a simple melody, maybe it's a tune that everyone knows, or a folk song that you grew up with, or a pop melody, and how do you adapt that, not only to be able to play those notes on your instrument, but how do you create a compelling version of it? And this, as Jonathan was also saying earlier, different traditions of music have strengths in these areas. And so you think of the jazz tradition where there are jazz standards. It's this entire catalog of tunes where there's a well-known melody, but then it's the job of the artist to then interpret that and arrange it in a new, fun, fresh, compelling way. And so that's something that we've been working on through the unique limitation of just being two-string instruments, but also two-string instruments who are pulling in a lot of ingredients from diverse influences. And so, as you were alluding to, Melissa, the next two pieces I think are great examples of that. We're going to be presenting a traditional American tune called Shenandoah, which Jonathan found from an album that he loves by, was it Keith Jarrett? Yeah, Keith Jarrett album. And he's like, Philip, we have to make our own version of this. And so it was a process of how do we take this melody that is already beautiful by itself in its simplicity, in its depth, and then how do we craft something around that to make it even more beautiful, to accentuate our strengths alongside the strengths of the music itself, to create a really unique and compelling artistic experience. So we'll start with that, and then we'll go straight into Fønix, which is a tune by the Norwegian fiddler Annbjørg Lien. And that was a tune that a mentor of ours taught us. And when we heard it, at least it was my first time listening to Norwegian fiddle music, and the energy and the joy within it, it was so captivating. And I think, just to kind of pull back to that earlier question, you don't know what's out there until you find it, and you won't know what grabs you by the heart until you find it. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about the arts and about curiosity in the arts, is that there might be something new, and your favorite song might be around the corner and you just haven't found it yet. And so I think Fønix for us was one of those tunes. And so we're so excited to be able to share both Fønix and Shenandoah with you now.
Yeah, I think we're all looking forward to listening to them as well. So yeah, on to you guys. Welcome back, Jonathan. Wow, I really liked how, Jonathan, you and Philip moved from the very soulful, languid tempo of Shenandoah to this really, fresh, like a fast, joyful tempo of Fønix. And I realized when I was listening to the music that especially Shenandoah, it sounds so familiar, but I'm hearing the music anew. So thank you so much for that. Now that I think we understand, better the eclectic nature of your music and the multiplicity of your musical influences, I think we should go to the Q&A segment of our program, opening up the conversation to our audience. So if you, the audience, have a question for Jonathan and Philip, please do type your questions in the YouTube chat box, and Jonathan and Philip would be happy to answer your questions the best way that they can. How do you feel, Jonathan and Philip, after your performance?
Feel great. I mean, that's such a fun tune to play. And actually, Melissa, what I wanted to say to kind of your reaction to it was, I think the beauty of going from a traditional American, song to a Norwegian song, it really shows you how interconnected our world really is, and how the arts can really fuse everything and bring people together when there's so much that kind of divides us in society. And I think it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it's like how, regardless of which geographical area that you're born or raised or where you live, a certain thing, there's a connective nature of music that brings you together, that you can appreciate in a way that's beyond, I guess, specific cultures and histories and geographies, which is really great. Thank you so much for that, and for reminding us of that. So we have a question from Kristen Ng, and she's asking, what advice would you give to aspiring musicians, especially during a pandemic? It's almost like there's two questions here. So what advice would you give to aspiring musicians? And is it especially difficult during the pandemic? And how do you think young musicians, aspiring musicians could navigate this milieu?
Can I take the first shot?
Go for it.
I think my advice for aspiring musicians and artists, for that matter, would be to first of all follow your curiosity and follow your heart. It can be very challenging at times, especially if you go through pretty rigorous training where people tell you what you should be doing, to kind of lose sight of that. And I think we should always remind ourselves of why we do what we do to begin with, which is the love for it and the joy that it brings us, and that from the artistic perspective, it's an avenue for expression that maybe words cannot kind of do the same kind of justice. It's a way to connect with people and to bring people together. And I think the only way that you can be as authentic as possible through your artistry is to be authentic to yourself first, and to love yourself first, and to follow your heart and follow your dreams. So that's the first part of that. And it's a very difficult time. I think we're all feeling quite isolated right now, and especially from just a industry standpoint, the arts are suffering a lot. And I would, Yo-Yo Ma we both saw this, Yo-Yo Ma had he was asked the same question on PPS the other day. And what he said was, well, start with a simple gift, which is think about something that you can give to somebody else during this time. If you're a painter, think about, oh, what are some colors that I can bring out that would mean a lot for someone I would send it to? If you're a musician, what can I play for that person? And make it very intentional. And make it intentional and share it with them. And it's this idea of one person at a time that, you know, it's really, that's how you move people, is you make a connection one person at a time. And I think in this time when things are so isolating, it's a chance to really connect with those who are dear to us, but also those that we have lost contact with, that we, you know, so I think it's a beautiful time to revisit that and to share.
Philip?
Said it all.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. And I have a follow-up question. It's, you know, it's not easy, I think, to be a full-time musician. And I know both of you are trained for many years. Could you tell us a little bit about your training process? How many years did you train to become a professional musician, a professional artist? And what advice would you have for artists moving forward in terms of the kind of preparation that they need to do in order to you know, be of a specific standard and mastery in to present their work to the world?
I'll let you take it first, Evan. Yeah.
I feel it's related to the conversation we just had, because things are being revealed, and the landscape of the performing arts is shifting even as we speak. And so in regards to our training, we could tell you how many years we've been playing, how young we were when we started our instruments, and it's been many years, and many years of with great teachers and great colleagues and friends and so many memories. In terms of moving forward, though, and I think we were having a conversation about this just recently, I think it's very easy in the pursuit of a craft in which there's a technical requirement, right? There is a certain amount of technical skill and mastery that has to go in. We have to practice the scales, the etudes, to be able to execute. But I think it's, and we've talked, it's so easy to lose sight where the technique itself becomes the goal, and the pursuit of mastery and perfection becomes the all-consuming end, to which there is no end, because as humans, you know, we can reach extreme levels of skill and precision and consistency, but there's always, everyone, even the best, has their off days. And so to make that the end, the goal of one's playing seems to be missing a lot of, you lose a lot in the process. And so the advice would be definitely work on that technique and be honing your craft. But also, as we've been talking about this whole time, this is the time to learn new skills. This is the time to invest your time and your precious time and headspace into the things that are going to be necessary for the future. And some of the practical applications of that in this time are, I think a lot of people in the classical music world are discovering the necessity of technological literacy. Basic things around that. It's the reality we live in now, but also things, principles around entrepreneurship. How do you create opportunities when the traditional ones that we've been looking for and competing for are no longer even there? Self-leadership. How do you, in a very difficult time where it's hard to sustain motivation, what are the principles that guide you, the things that keep you pointed towards a goal? So there's all these new things that are, I think, have always been important, but especially in this time, are being revealed to be areas where maybe our field was lacking before, and now we can't afford to do that. So
maybe I can personalize that just in terms of our relationship and our duo, because I think it says a lot about our working. Yeah, it's just why we work so well together. Philip brings a lot to the table. He's incredible with tech. He's a great designer, great with marketing. I am not good at those things. You know, you know, after I graduated, I worked in management for a while. That's how I met you, Melissa. I worked at the 92nd Street Y in education. That's how I gained these kind of more entrepreneurial skills to create my own thing. The relationship skills too, and throughout that process. So we both bring different things to the table, but I think it's all about this. It all stems from this curiosity to just learn more. There's always something to learn. And I think in this day and age, I think this is what Philip is talking about, is it's really important to be versatile. I mean, just to put it simply, really versatile as an artist. It's not enough to just be a beautiful artist. You know, there's so many other parts to it. And I wish it was enough actually to be a beautiful artist, but in order to really be successful and to reach people, you have to be able to do many different things and wear different hats. So that's kind of what, yeah, that's what feeds our learning process.
Yeah, I really loved what you said. It's almost like, yes, mastery of the craft is important, right? Instinct, innate talent is important, but at the same time, you need to learn all these other skills in order to present yourselves and reach out to more audiences, and to make sure that you have a thriving career. Thank you so much for that. That's really, really good advice and feedback. We have another question from Han. How do you two resolve differences during the music creation process? You talked a little bit about how you work together as to market yourselves, to present yourselves, but how about the artistic process itself? Like, how do you work together in order to create the music that you create?
I'll say that first off, the way we actually go about a lot of times writing our own music and arranging our own music is through the process of improvisation. So if, for example, if there's something, sometimes we'll just do a free improvisation and we'll record ourselves and be like, well, I love that part, I love that part. Let's see how we can connect them. For tunes that like Shenandoah and Fønix, where the melody and the harmony have been kind of determined mostly, we take that and we improvise on it and we get ideas. That's kind of how we approach creating arrangements and creating pieces. What I will say about resolving differences is that Philip is very adaptable. Much more.
Sorry, you.
No, I would say that I'm a lot more stubborn than Philip is, and I'm probably more opinionated than Philip is. But Philip is just Philip really has the intellect and the versatility to adapt and to really make anything sound good. That's why composers love working with Philip so much, because he's really easy to work with. So I think that's a huge part of how we resolve differences during the music creation process, because I will be like, I don't like that. And then Philip would be like, okay, let me try this, and let me try that. And he'll bring different options to the table. And then we'll find something that eventually both of us love.
And oftentimes the things that Jonathan is very stubborn about end up being the right things to be stubborn about. So to his credit.
That's good.
Great. Okay, so I have a question that I have two questions I'm going to combine together. One is from Matthew Gibbs and one is from myself. I think they're related. When COVID-19 subsides, what are your hopes for the return of the arts to public spaces and live performances? And in relations to that, what are some of your short and long-term goals for ARKAI? As you know, we're on Zoom now because of the pandemic. We can't be, together in a physical space. What do you think of that moving forward in terms of the arts and your work specifically?
From the arts perspective, I hope that this period it's kind of a reckoning moment for all of us, because I hope that I think so many people miss the energy that comes with live performance. And so I hope that it translates into a way of life, really, and a support for the arts where people will go out and support live performances and musicians and artists. I really hope that, and if that's what comes out of this really unprecedented time, I think that would be kind of a silver lining. From what's next for ARKAI, and it kind of feeds into this because we're thinking a lot about it. We're really excited to be launching a new initiative called Support NYC in the coming weeks. And through Support NYC, what we're going to be doing is providing free fundraising performances for small businesses and organizations across New York City. And so you can imagine, I think there was a New York Times article that came out earlier this week that said that 1/3 of all small businesses might not make it to this time. A lot of arts organizations are suffering deeply. And so this is kind of our way to give back through the arts, but also support, businesses, whether it be restaurants, hair salons, you name it, or nonprofits doing really important work that could use some assistance. And so that's our way of giving back, and kind of through very, very intimate performances, socially distanced, a lot of them, outside, kind of like what you're seeing right now, what you're experiencing. So that's what we're putting together, and we're really excited about launching that. And so you want to talk about how people might actually get involved? Because it's actually, that's what we love about this initiative, is how it's very easy for everybody. Everybody can get involved somehow. Yeah.
And in that way, it's very much like a grassroots effort where at any level, there's a way to participate. And so nominating businesses is a huge part of this. As Jonathan was saying, there are, is it hundreds of thousands?
Hundreds of, I think.
There are so many businesses, and even with our best Google Maps sleuthing skills, we would never be able to find the places that are impacting communities that people love, the places that have been there for decades, that have stories and history behind them. And so nominating a business for someone to say, even if that's the only thing I can do, I can point them to this business that I love. That's a huge part. For people who have spaces, which is at a premium right now, for people who have access to spaces, who are willing to host private events, that's a huge way one can get involved. For those with the means to do so, becoming match donors to help increase the amount of support that a small business can raise through their event, another massive part of that. In addition to just attending the events and donating and supporting the businesses, but at all these different levels, or even another one, just posting on social media, increasing the awareness of this, that we hope that it grows organically and that people are hearing about this, the business owners are hearing, the people in the communities are hearing, that it becomes this really beautiful organic show of the importance, the necessity, the relevance of the arts in our city.
So people can learn more at supportnyc.info. Had to plug it. But we could put it in the chat box later. So
supportnyc.info. So that is where we could nominate businesses and spaces and organizations that you could help fundraise for. Is that right?
Exactly.
Oh my gosh, what you said just like warmed my fundraising heart. Oh yeah, I'm looking forward to learning more about it as well. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Thank you. I think we are near the end of our hour-long program, and it's time to move on to the introduction of your final performance. And I understand, since we're talking about how we've all been affected by the pandemic, I do understand that ARKAI, you have actually reacted to the pandemic by composing a piece of music that's specific to what you think is your experience as an experience of others. Could you talk a little bit more about that before playing it for us?
Sure. So at the start of the pandemic, Philip and I were quarantining in separate places, and we could not improvise together in real time like we were so used to. But we did want to keep our artistic process going and our compositional process going. So the way we would do that would be to record ourselves and then send the recording to the other person, and then the person would play on top of it and send it back. It would be this back and forth, very tedious process. And so what we did was actually we created a piece on electric instruments, but for one, I'll let Philip talk about that in a second. But we created a piece called Letters from COVID, because on the second half of this piece, what you will hear is the original audio that we were sending to one another during that time, during this period. And so what we hope to create is a piece that kind of encapsulates what we are all going through at this moment, a period of extreme hardship, but also with really beautiful moments within and a hopeful future.
And as Jonathan was describing, you'll notice that this piece, we are no longer playing on our wooden acoustic instruments. We'll be playing on electric instruments, much in the way that there's acoustic guitars and electric guitars. There's also electric violins and electric cellos, and they are very cool. And this was one of our ways of continuing, like we've been talking about this whole time, continuing our exploration, feeding our curiosities, our desire to pull in all of the influences that we have musically and express them in new ways so that we can connect with more kinds of audiences. And so you'll hear the expressive tools that we have are now completely different. And we hope that you find it, what's the word? We hope you find it fun. We have a lot of fun playing this. But we feel like we're charting new territory ourselves, even in this very moment. So we hope you enjoy Letters from COVID.
I think all of us can't wait to listen to it.
Great.
Wow. So with this moving piece of music, letters from COVID, we have now come to the end of our public program for today. Thank you so much, ARKAI, for being with us. Thank you so much to the audience for supporting MOCA, and we'll see you at our next public program. Bye-bye.